Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. I'm delighted to introduce our new 4-part mini-series called Thriving in Law in collaboration with Thrive Law, a multi-award-winning employment law firm headquartered in Leeds, where we aim to help raise awareness around important topics such as mental health and diversity inclusion in the law. Over the next 4 mini-sodes, I'll be joined by some of the Thrive Law's team, including founding partner and managing director Jodie Hill, solicitors Imogen Hamblin and Alicia Collinson, and partner Tom Stenner-Evans. To kick off the mini-series, as you can see, I'm delighted to welcome back to the Legally Speaking podcast Jodie Hill, who featured in season 2 of the show, one of our all-time most listened to shows. As mentioned, Jodie is the founder and managing partner of Thrive Law. Jodie is an Employment Law Committee member for the Law Society, a fellow for the Royal Law Society of Public Health, and has received numerous nominations and awards for all of her hard work. So a very big welcome back, Jodie.
Oh, thank you. That was lovely. No, thank you for having me back. And I can't believe it's one of the most downloaded podcasts. That's awesome.
I definitely can believe it. I think all the work that you do is amazing and should be thoroughly recognised. But today we are talking about some really important topics, most dearly to your heart and my heart, as well as business owners. But for those who perhaps haven't or don't know as much about your journey and story, could you tell us a bit about your journey and why you set up Thrive Law?
Absolutely. So I did a non-traditional route, and I actually trained as a barrister before I became a solicitor. I then went into practice, and I've always had mental health problems, but I've managed it with medication. And it got to a point in 2017 where actually I couldn't cope anymore. And what I described at the time was I basically had a mental breakdown. That meant I couldn't leave the house, couldn't do an awful lot of things that I could ordinarily do. And I'm quite, as you know, quite a bubbly person. And it took away everything really. And actually what I had to do was leave the law at that stage. I almost left the law completely, but I actually started to get better as I was a consultant. So what I decided to do was get my confidence back, work flexibly as a self-employed consultant, having left my job following the breakdown. And then I got my fire back in my belly, and I was like, do you know what? There isn't a firm out there that really has diversity and inclusion at the core of its values, at the core of everything that they do. I got offered jobs in big firms, and I was like, I don't want to go to another big firm. Actually, what I want to do is create something new. So in a moment of madness, I, at age 29, set up my own law firm in 2018. So I started the journey at the end of 2017. Thrive was then born with just me on 1st of March 2018, and now we have a team of about 10. In fact, you just mentioned Tom, the partner that we've just taken on, and Tom's joined us basically because of the aligned values around diversity and inclusion, and I'm sure he'll talk to you about that. But the great thing is that despite me setting it up through my own passion, everybody that's joined shares that. And it's such a great community and such a great family to work with.
Yeah, and I must say, I'm a massive fan of Thrive and everything that you're doing, and particularly under your leadership. But again, for people probably new to Thrive, what makes Thrive so different from other law firms? Because you mentioned you had offers from other places, yeah. But talk us through that.
So I think there's a couple of things. I think from my perspective, what makes us so different is that we're the only law firm in the UK, or that I've seen, that specialise in this way. And what I mean by that is we literally have diversity and inclusion at everything that we do. So obviously, being employment lawyers, we advise on discrimination and the legal side of it. But we add so much more value. It isn't just about the law. So that's part of it. And I think also the other side of it is the authenticity piece, in that, a lot of law firms are made up by lots of partners, and there's not really a personality or anything authentic behind that. It's a brand name, perhaps the partners' names. And so even with the name Thrive, everything about what I try to do is I'm just myself. And actually that's really what has attracted the people to us. That, Alicia, again, another person who was attracted because of that, because of my authenticity, because of my openness about my own struggles. Because the reality is we're all human and none of us are perfect. I might have a law firm now, but I had a breakdown a few years ago. So, we're all on this journey. And I think when people can see that, they see a bit of a role model or something that they want to be part of. And I think that's what sets us apart, because no other law firms really are stepping into this arena in that way.
Yeah, I think you've just taken the mask off. And that's really, really important, because, exactly that authenticity piece, always be authentic. And yeah, it's a really human approach. And that's what I think is really nice to see. And I hope this inspires other law firms to sort of think about that as well. And that leads nicely on to what advice you may offer to other law firm owners or senior partners in larger law firms looking to improve their approaches to mental health and diversity and inclusion.
I'm actually one of the mentors at the SRA for other firms. So this is actually something that I do on a day-to-day, actually support other firms. So the first thing is, I would say, if you're considering making a step, see if there's someone you can buddy up with or mentor and bounce off. Most firms don't need, I don't have a department of mental health or whatever. I am the person that does everything. So just bear in mind, resources aren't everything. You can do small things on a consistent basis. It's not about waiting until you can afford a head of diversity and inclusion. You don't need to do that. The best thing is to start now and make baby steps, but be consistent and think of initiatives that are really aligned with your values. Don't just do something because it's popular, because it doesn't come across as engaging. It's not received in the way that you want it to be received, and actually it has no impact. So really think about it. Don't just do what another firm's done because they're doing it. But actually, I think the key thing I would say is just make a start. Don't stop putting it off. I think so many firms put it off because of the pandemic, because they don't have a resource, they don't have time. Make time, because those companies and firms that invest in mental health, invest in diversity and inclusion initiatives, are the firms that will succeed. That's what people are looking for.
Yeah, and I think, perfect isn't always the answer. I think starting now, and as you say, you'll evolve over time, but the biggest thing is actually take action. I think there's a lot of talk around these, highly important topics that need to be raised awareness even further. But if you take some action, then, you will get improvement over time and time again. It's great to see what you've done at Thrive, and that's been really well received. And you've won numerous awards as an extension of that. But I guess the sort of throwaway last question from us is, you're on a journey. You started, as you said, in 2018. What are the plans for Thrive moving into 2021? You've had your most recent partner hire, which is super excited. But what does Thrive look like in 2025 and beyond?
It looks like we're going to keep growing, guys. No, there's a lot of planning to do. I think the idea of actually setting up our own podcast, I think, is something that we'd like to do next year, really focused around diversity and inclusion. Not a legal podcast, not about law, but actually looking at some of the finer details around diversity and inclusion. So that's hopefully going to launch in Q2. We have a new solicitor starting who's 7 years PQE, is joining us in February. And who knows, more growth, more awards, hopefully. Let's see. But, I think, this year has been incredibly difficult for everybody. We had no plans to take a partner on this year at all or grow. And actually, being able to kind of survive this year has been amazing. So next year, January is very much a strategic planning month. And I'm just about to take a couple of weeks off to recharge and really come back to hit the ground running.
I think that's a really important final point, actually, about recharging. And that, again, just senses the DNA of the Thrive Law Firm, and the fact that, you encourage that, right? Certain law firms, there'll be lots of lawyers going into the Christmas period or the other side of the Christmas period that are worried. I can't really take time off. I'm under pressure. I've got to hit chargeable hours targets. I've got to do this, that, and the other. What would you say to that?
Yeah, well, one of the things we do at Thrive is I force everyone to take Christmas off. We close. I don't allow people to work at Christmas. I just think it's the one time when you can really switch off. And if everybody's off, you really can switch off. I think what the problem with having phones and devices is that even if you do switch off because you see emails coming in, you don't actually fully switch off. So I do think it's important to have that time every year. And it's certainly the time that I recharge and come up with my best ideas on a beach somewhere. So I do think it's really important. But I think leaders need to practice what they preach. And this year has been difficult. We've had to just do what we've got to do to get through this madness. But equally, making that time to recharge, you'll be a better lawyer. You'll be a better person. It's better for your mental health. So it is really important, and it's something I massively encourage with my staff. I actually told them they had to take all their leave this year because I wanted them to take time off, because they worked so hard. I think it's so easy to just forget that at times. And as lawyers, we do work really hard. We work long hours. But one thing I would say is that we don't have billable hours targets. That's another difference. And that, again, really does help, because actually we measure on behaviours and output rather than hours billed.
Yeah, and I love that. And by the time we release this in the new year, everyone's going to have been refreshed, recharged after the Christmas break, and really kind of on track to help you with the Vision for Thrive Law. But Jodie, thank you so much. It's been great having you back on the show. We're really looking forward to the next 3 mini-sodes where we meet some more of your team and colleagues. So yeah, super excited. But from all of us on the Legally Speaking podcast, over and out.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Legally Speaking podcast. If you enjoyed the show and want to help support us, remember to leave us a rating and review on Apple iTunes. You can also support the show and gain exclusive benefits, bonus content, and much more by signing up to our Patreon page, which is www.patreon.com/Legally Speaking podcast. Thanks for listening.